Aloha and welcome back to the Kauai Real Estate Podcast. This is going to be a wing it episode. It means I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, but I'm just going to start talking and we'll see where it goes. So I think I'm going to talk about timelines and contingencies, or at least that's where we're going to start. So I had a transaction once where the buyer's conditional loan approval was due on a certain date. Let's call it March 3rd, just for fun. And the buyer was very committed to the property. They've submitted all their documents for financing. They've signed off on all of the other contingencies so far. And the March 3rd date comes along and the lender doesn't have their conditional loan approval letter yet. So I let the listing agent know. And I also provided an amendment, which is a document that amends the aforementioned contract. And the amendment asked for a 3-day extension because the lender had indicated that he or she, we won't call anyone out, would have the document by March 6th. So we send that off to the sellers and we get a response from the listing agent that the sellers aren't going to grant their extension and they're canceling. This is probably the most shocking and devastating thing I've ever had happen in a transaction. Well, maybe not. I might be being dramatic, but it was a big shock. I'd seen people kind of ignore due dates for things, let them come and go. Nobody really pays attention. It slides around. It's not really my style. So, I like all my ducks in a row and all the documents signed. So this was a super big surprise and really difficult for me to explain to the client. Only because I felt like they would think it was my fault or I'd done something wrong, but the reality was I'd actually given them more time to get their conditional loan approval than usually is in a contract. So it really kind of fell to the lender. So the transaction canceled. One of the reasons that the sellers wanted to cancel was the market was changing so rapidly. So they were able to put the property back on the market immediately. And I, really, again, had a tough time with my clients. They were very understanding. They understood that they weren't able to perform in accordance with the contract and the seller had canceled in alignment with their rights per the contract, but it still was pretty frustrating. The buyers did move forward with their loan just to see if they could get conditional. The hope was that they would get their conditional loan approval on March 6th. Again, made up transaction, but they were hoping they could get it by March 6th before the sellers put the property back in escrow, and that maybe the sellers would come back to them because by having the conditional loan approval, they theoretically would be closing in 2 weeks. So that would be more attractive than most new buyer transactions where they'd have to start over with the inspection period. But unfortunately, the sellers did get another buyer really quickly before we had a chance to provide their conditional loan approval letter. And in the end, it was more like mid-March when the lender finally let them know that he wouldn't have been able to ever give them conditional loan approval. So you do get to see in these transactions that as horrible as that was, things do always seem to work themselves out. In the end, it is always important to pay attention to the contract and the contract contingencies and the due dates. Your agent should be providing you with a timeline so that both you and the agent are following it. Because ultimately, you as a buyer, I've now made you a buyer, whether you want to be one or not. But ultimately, you as the buyer are responsible for that contract. You've signed that contract. You're the one that's legally bound to the terms of it. So, spectacular agents have transaction coordinators and timelines or create their own timelines. They make sure that you're aware of everything that's due and when it's due and how the whole contract goes. The ideal agent is going to guide you through the whole process, but you do want to pay attention to when things are due because it matters. It matters when the sellers have things due because the buyers can cancel. It matters when if they don't perform. It matters when the buyers have things due because the sellers can cancel and go right back on the market. And in a busy, speedy market where there are lots of buyers, it's to the seller's advantage to back out. and go back on the market in an increasing market. This does fall kind of in under my theory or thought or feeling or whatever you want to call it. I think things always do work out the way they're supposed to. You can't always see it when it's happening. It's devastating. I know I had a client interested in buying a property. They put it in escrow contingent upon the sale of another property. They weren't able to sell that property in time and they lost the property and they were devastated. But then another property popped up that was actually better suited to their needs, and their property sold and they were able to buy it and everything worked out. So, as much as we want to kind of control the things around us and see where things are going in advance, you just never know. But I promise you, I haven't had a situation in real estate that fell apart that didn't later end up resulting in something way better. I guess that's it for today. Just the moral of the story is keep yourself positive, have hope, and it will all work out. Thanks for listening and have a great day. Mahalo.